The topic of career and layoffs has been buzzing around a lot lately for good reason. And it's a great time for us to think about what success means. And there's a great TED Talk that I saw about our definition of success. And it was by a woman named Laura Gossner-Otting, and she has a phrase called WONDERHELL, which basically is what's on the other side of success. It's this next step. It's this next thing. It's this next wave of desire and aspiration. And how healthy is that? And can we understand that life is a series of successes and failures, and the gold ring that we're always looking to reach? I mean, it's obvious that it could become an addictive behavior. So I want to look at that behavior. I want to talk about what WONDERHELL is, meaning what does it feel like to go down this rabbit hole of desire and not ever realize that you're in a good place, but you can't just sit there. You have to continue moving on. But there's more to it. So let's get into this. I want Laura to hop on here on Swell and be a part of what I think could be a really cool breath that we can all take while we're watching the economy do this and our jobs do that. I think it's a great idea to understand we can get what we deserve in terms of, advancement, but sometimes a pause is a good thing. And defining what you want is a good thing. After 20 years of studying this field and doing recruitment and helping leaders go through huge changes, Laura really is a person that could help us in this conversation. So, Laura, if you're up for it, let's have this conversation. Just hit reply. We're excited to hear your voice, and of course, new voices will come in to really bolster this. And I'm fascinated by our instinct to not just breathe and know our success, but we keep on reaching for it. So I want to take a breath with everybody and think about this and get some language around it. So looking forward.
That's interesting. If we think about how society views success, it would probably be in terms of accomplishments and how far you've reached in terms of your credentials. But the thing is, then how do you decide which credential makes you more successful? How do you compare success in that terms, that you can say that this person is more successful than this person? What makes success a relative concept? Now, while we might think that success is a societal concept, I think it's more of a mental concept. I don't think it's accomplishment itself, but the feeling of accomplishment. You can win the Nobel Prize, but if you don't feel good about it and you don't feel that you really did something, I don't know if you'd call yourself successful. On the other hand, you can just find love and you'd be like, okay, I'm successful because, I'm happy and I have what I want. Maybe it's the feeling of self-fulfillment, which is success. What do you think?
So I'm hearing two big themes here, which is, how we feel about the framing of success has to come from inside, and our ability to detach from those feelings so that we can actually enjoy life between those highs, I think. Life that is not anchored by those successes. I think both of you really hit on two very important aspects of being happy, because you are aware of the trappings of aspiration, of drive, and of ultimately success, and the feelings of what that might mean for others, different than what it might be experienced by you. Both excellent points. And and anchoring my own mind with those 2 points just challenges me and makes me realize that it's all up to us to feel good in any given moment of our lives when we're assessing where we are. Thanks so much.
Hey, so I'm really excited to be trying Swell for my first time. This is Laura Gassner-Otting. I appreciate, Deborah, you bringing me onto this platform to talk about WONDERHELL, my upcoming new book. So I think it's very easy to think that success doesn't bring us happiness because we're constantly being told by the external world that we should be doing more and more and more, bigger, better, faster, more is the only way to do it. And that's actually part of the topic of what I talked about in my last book called Limitless, How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path, and Live Your Best Life, which was founded on the premise that we spend our lives fulfilling success, filling in all the boxes, going faster and faster and faster, only to find ourselves falling further and further behind. And we do that because we're filling in the boxes of somebody else's definition of success. So somebody at some point, whether it was a parent or a teacher or a friend or the Kardashians or somebody on social media, showed you some version of success and you were like, okay, that's what I got to do. And we go and we go and we go. And even if we get there, it doesn't feel good because it's not a definition that is our definition. So I spent 20 years in executive search, as Deborah mentioned, and I was paid by my clients to find them the most successful people in the world, and recruit them away to go work on their behalf. And I was calling these people because they were super successful, but they were all calling me back because despite all that success, they weren't very happy. And I was fascinated by this question. So I wrote a book about what I found was the thing that actually gave people both success and happiness. And it's consonance. It's this idea of alignment, of flow. It's when what you do matches who you are, and you can bring the very best of yourself to all of your work, solving problems you care about and being rewarded in ways that are actually meaningful to you, whether it's financial, emotional, karmic, whatever. And then once that book came out, it was very successful despite my not knowing what the hell I was doing. And I found myself in this moment where I was like, oh, so the book is kind of good. It's kind of being seen by people. People are reading it. I want more people to read it. What if I was like on the Today Show? What if I could be on Good Morning America? Oh my God, what about Oprah? And suddenly I had this question in my mind, like I did the thing that I didn't know I could do, and that work opened more doors than I ever thought possible. But as I peeked through those doors at what could be, I also saw a version of myself that I never thought possible. And suddenly I saw my potential. Potential I never knew existed. And so WONDERHELL is about this moment of it's amazing, it's exciting, it's wonderful to achieve something you actually care about. But it's also anxiety-provoking and stressful and full of uncertainty and doubt and imposter syndrome and indecision and eventually exhaustion and burnout. It's wonderful, but it's kind of hell. It's kind of WONDERHELL. So what do we do in those moments where we see this possibility, this potential, and we want to live into it? We want to be all we can be because that's, how we've evolved, right? To become the very best version of ourselves. But in that, there's a lot of difficulty and struggle. And so how do we get through those moments? And so, I think it's interesting to think about this question of how do we define success? But I think that's kind of an easier answer. We have to figure out how to define success that matters to us, not success that matters to everybody else around us. But then once we do, and we start actually making some progress about the thing that means something to us, that actually matters to us, that we take so much more seriously than everybody else's goals, then what? What do we do with that burden of potential? How do we live up to what we can be when it comes into our lives and is like, hey, what you got for me? Are you going to live into this newfound you didn't even know existed last week, last month, last year? Are you going to let it pass you by? I personally would much rather live with the embarrassment of failure than the pain of haunting regret. What about you?
Laura, it's so good to hear your voice. God, I really love what you just said. I grew up. Many of my formative years were in Silicon Valley. I was there from 91 to 2018. And I saw some encroaching disease come upon people all around me where, of course, we can study greed all day long. and what greed does to people and their focus. But to your point of like being really psyched about your success and being like on that train, and that train runs you away from yourself, and you're going down this track, and it wasn't even your track to begin with, but you're just being propelled by the engine of some other value system. And my question to you is, it's so profound that you just drop into your heart when you talk about this, which I love. And I've seen your talks, and I've followed your career a bit, and I know that you're such a good soul, and I know that part of you wants people to, yes, succeed and go far, but you really are aware of the breakdown of the soul and of just all the goodness that someone could feel in a simple moment because they're on that freight train barreling forward. How do you help people understand that they're not giving up aspirations and success and drive by stepping back? Like, how do you give them the confidence, especially a young person, or even a person who's on the other side of their career, they're afraid they're not using their years well. I guess it's patience, but it's also, it's imbuing them with a certain value to having their own rhythm and not someone else's rhythm. How do you help people not feel badly that they're taking that breath, and that failure isn't the worst thing in the world? What kind of confidence can you build when the world is dropping you all these big fat messages saying, you better get faster, stronger, louder?
It's such a good question about how do we be okay with taking a step back, taking a time out, getting on the merry-go-round instead of the roller coaster, right? So I'll tell you a personal story to answer this question. When the pandemic first began, I found myself, like a lot of people, not sleeping. Stressed, uncertain, chaos. I didn't know what was happening. I had spent the previous 2 years building an executive coaching practice and building a speaking practice. And I got paid to get on planes and go to events and speak in front of audiences. Well, all of a sudden, the pandemic happened, and suddenly there were no planes, and there were no events, and there were no audiences. So who was I when I was no longer LGO? Who was I? And I had spent the previous 20 years running and running and running and bigger, better, faster, more with this idea that, like, I'm going to keep achieving. And then it all went away, and I was forced to just sit with myself, and sit with myself when I wasn't continuing to, achieve. And it was really difficult. And I stopped sleeping, and I couldn't remember numbers. Like, I couldn't remember the workout that I wanted to do. How many sets of 5? How many sets of 10? I couldn't remember how many teaspoons of sugar went into the dessert that I was making from the time that I looked at my cookbook to the time that I turned around to get the sugar out of the drawer. And it was traumatizing. I thought there was something really wrong with me. So I went to go see a psychiatrist. And during the first appointment, I told him all about myself, who I was, what I'd achieved, all the things that I want to do, my big plans in life. And he looked at me and he said, wow, he goes, you are an overachiever. He goes, you are a striver. We can work on that. And I looked at him and I was like, that's not a bug. I'm like, that's a feature, not a bug, man. I don't want to work on that. And he goes, yeah, but it's untenable. And I said, no, I'm fine. And he goes, yeah, but you're here. Checkmate, right? You're here. Okay, touche, you're right. And then he said something to me so utterly profound that I hear it in my head every single day. He said, Laura, you don't have to give any of the trophies back. And I was like, whoa. He was like, you are who you are. You are what you've achieved. You don't have to give any of the trophies back. You are not lesser because you don't continue to go and strive and collect another gold star. And I had to sit with that for a little bit and realize that I am the sum total of all of the things that have come before me, and I will be the sum total of all the things that will come next. But I don't have to keep going to prove my worth to anybody because, as Eleanor Roosevelt said, we would worry much less about what other people thought about us if we realized how seldomly they did. In other words, nobody else is paying that much attention to know or even care if we're continuing to grow and go and grow and grow. It's just us. So we got to kind of give ourselves a break and say all the things that I'm doing, whether they are large or whether they are small, still add in to who I will become. And I'll tell you one other personal story, which is that there was a day that I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I had the worst night of sleep. I'm not going to get anything done. And my son was like, you should go on a side quest. And I was like, what's a side quest? Okay, so if you play video games, you know that a side quest is if the goal is to go to the castle and slay the dragon and save the princess, a side quest is like tilling your wheat and taking it to the market and exchanging it for money. And for that money, you then take that money and you buy a sword and a horse so that when the time comes, you can go to the castle and slay the dragon and save the princess. He was like, if you can't save the princess today, he goes, just till your wheat. And so I started making a list of all the small things, the side quests that I could be doing that eventually get me to the big goal. But I don't have to go to the big goal every single day. You can't save the princess every single day. Sometimes you just got to till your wheat. So those are my 2 stories. Let me know what you think.
Hey, Laura, what's so great about your reply is it just brings forward the power of story when it comes to teaching ideas. And the more personal we get with our stories, the more universal they seem to land in people's hearts. I mean, the more they have impact, because you take the time to bring us closer to your reality and your raison d'etre, I think, because during COVID, you experienced something so profound that it makes you much more powerful to reach into our lives and relate to us. And, sometimes we don't know when to get replenished. And I think that these conversations, the more personal, the better, because I know COVID was such a disruption to all of us, and for you particularly, because you were so on the trajectory of like go, 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 you probably didn't get a chance to, first of all, appreciate yourself and all that you've done, and second of all, recalibrate to say, what kind of life do I want to lead? And I think I look forward to your book, and I look forward to getting more into the weeds of that. But in this conversation, I think it's really appropriate to ask the next question, which is the hard questions that we have to ask ourselves, because especially with loved ones who we see going down a real rabbit hole of this sort of like drive. It's very hard to convince people to stop, because there's so many indicators at the societal level saying go, go, go. So what questions can we ask people to help them better reflect on maybe this is not the right choice? Because I think that's what we're trying to do, is kind of be accountable to those we love, as opposed in addition to ourselves. So if you and I were having coffee and you just noticed, like, I'm just not looking great, I'm talking a mile a minute, I'm really putting out this like 5-year plan. What are the questions you would ask me to not just slow me down, but to have me recalibrate my own understanding of the value of what you're saying? Because some people just aren't convinced.
What an interesting question. I've seen so many people fall into this trap of going and doing and striving, and they sit down with me and they tell me their big, hairy, audacious goals, and most of them don't achieve them. And the reason most of them don't achieve them is because they actually don't care about them. And here's why I think that is. I think that we spend a lot of our time creating goals that a friend of mine who's a professional triathlete, Travis McKenzie, he calls look good goals. So the goals that look good on the wall. You put them up on the vision board in your beautiful scrolly font, and you don't actually get them done because we can't be insatiably hungry for someone else's goals. We can only be insatiably hungry for our own. So we go, and we strive, and we strive, and we strive. And maybe if we fulfill them, fine. The boxes are full, but we still feel empty. And we feel empty because we don't actually care about these goals. And so we create bigger goals and broader goals and deeper goals, bigger, better, faster, more. And most of the time we're doing that, frankly, because we want the love and appreciation and acceptance of the people who we think like those goals, right? So there are a lot of people in our lives who, when you tell them your big, hairy, scary goals, they do one of, several things. Number one, they say, wow, are you sure you can do that? That's going to be hard. I'm really worried about you. What if you get hurt? What if you fail? And these people love us. They love us. They just don't want to see us get hurt, and they're wonderful people. But most of them don't really know us. Like, the last time I lived in the same house as my parents, I was 17 years old. I put, the milk carton back in the refrigerator on empty. I put the car back in the garage on empty. So when I'm 24 or 37 or 50 and I'm telling them about this new crazy thing I'm going to do, their first reaction is, oh my God, she doesn't have her shit together. Can she really do it? Because that was like 35 years ago. I didn't have a frontal lobe. They don't know me. Number two, they're the people who are jealous of us. And they only see our rise through the lens of their own stagnation or fail. And so they're, smiles in the front and knives in the back, and they pretend to be supportive, but they're not really. So they're not actually really all that helping. They create these little sort of cancerous deposits in our brain about whether or not we can do it and how all the things are going to go wrong. And then there's the third group, and these are the ones who, when you tell them your big goals, they go, oh my God, I can't do that. That's too scary. Or you can't do that. That's too scary. What they really mean is, I can't do that. I'm too scared. But the fear that they put in our brains, again, another cancerous deposit. So we have these people and we think, I'm going to do it not because of them, but despite them. And so we're trying to prove and prove and prove and go and go and go and strive and strive and strive with these big 5-year plans, when really we don't stop to ask, do I actually care about those plans? Or am I just doing it because I'm searching desperately to fulfill and please somebody who's never going to even care if I do it? Because as Eleanor Roosevelt said, we would stop worrying so much about what other people thought about us if we realized how seldomly they did. So all these people who stop in and they deposit their little cancerous opinions on us, by the time we do the thing that we're hoping that they notice, they're not even paying attention. So how do you stop somebody who is in the midst of sort of manic achievement mode? I think you ask them, well, first of all, I think you see them. I think you say, that's amazing. That's exciting. You can do that. I think it's going to be amazing for you. You have to see them. So they're not in this defensive posture being like, well, I'm going to prove to you too that I can do it, right? You say, that's incredible. I'm here to support you. What do you need? How do we get there together? But also, as we're thinking that through, tell me a little bit more about why you want to do it. What will it mean to you when you achieve it? What will it do for the next step that you want to get to? Does it get you closer or farther from the thing that actually matters to you? So you ask them questions not about what they're doing, but sort of why they're doing it, why they're interested in it, what it's going to get them, what it's going to take from them in order to do it. And I think you have to start by seeing them and appreciating them and acknowledging them, because that's the thing we're all creating these massive plans to try to get. And then from there, then you start asking the questions about why and what and how.
Hey, wow, I'm sitting in the airport in LAX going towards NYC, and I just was listening to this, and I have to say there's two things that really pop out for me. I just love your groundedness around why people project onto other people and what that really does to sabotage our own understanding of our success track. But it's really comforting to understand that I've experienced what you've said, and I get it. I get it that we put ourselves in old situations and people meet us where we were, not where we are. But the very end of your response to the compassionate listening and then the gentle inquiry and the challenge that presents to somebody in a really good way, like, tell me what you'll feel like at the end of all this. It's really epically important. And then on the other side of that is to unpack it with them if they realize, oh my God, this is a goal that I'm not really sure I need to push forward with. God, we have to be each other's stewards. Like, we have to make sure, especially as women, we have to be committed to making sure no one just jumps off the deep end because they think they should, without any guardrails, without any sense of capacity to handle what's on the other side of that big leap. You are so wonderful. Your energy and your wisdom and your capacity to frame things is stunning. And I just want to thank you for being here and for all the time you've given us. And my wish is that, we can continue this conversation in different conversations. In other words, in different swells. So I would love to be able to bring you back for topics that come up, especially when they're relevant to news items. And also I look forward to perhaps you creating a conversation on your own from your own Swellcast. Because it's a great place for people to really iterate and take a breath and think. So I'm looking forward to continuing this relationship with you that we started, and I'm so grateful that you're here.